Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Mike Shea, your Florida business broker, and today I'm going to go through 10 questions you need to ask your landlord or your leasing agent when taking on a new location. So, the first one is, who is really the landlord? Um, it's important to know who really is the decision maker. That intelligence can tell you, and with a little Google searching, can tell you a great deal about who you're negotiating against, what their history is, either legally or financially, and what their touch points are with regard to having a fair and equitable lease negotiation. So, get the name of who the real owner of the company is. Some of that's really is readily available on property records, but you want to ask the leasing agent or the landlord who really owns the company. Excuse me. And then you want to ask, how long has the landlord owned the property? This context question allows you to understand their mortgage position, their financial position, and then when looking at the property relative to the answer that you get, will tell you how invested they are in making repairs and doing upkeep. If you have an owner who's owned the property for 40 years and the place looks like a war zone, you probably know darn well that you're not going to get a lot of support and improvements done out of their pocket. And then, number three would be, is there local property management? Some plazas are managed locally. Some are managed remotely. It's an important question because when you have an issue, you're going to need your property manager to respond. Are you going to be waiting an hour, or are you going to be waiting 5 days to get them to address the issue? Local representation is always better. Next, what is the history of the building? This is an important one I've had some experience with. You want to know, A, how old it is and what it has been in the past. Google allows you to do a little bit of this searching, but this has a great deal to do with some structural issues. You may be able to find that there have been accidents or sinkholes, or you may be, find out you're going into a former gas station or industrial site. And believe it or not, even though certain checks in terms of phase ones and phase twos are supposed to be done, there were times in the 80s and 90s where bank financing was being done without any thought to these types of mitigation issues, and that can come back and bite you in the ass later on. So the next question, who is doing the leasing on the property? Is it the landlord personally? Is it a real estate brokerage, or is it a professional property management firm? And how does their business function? So just because you're a real estate licensee doesn't mean you're a property manager and have experience that is really applicable. And that may work to your advantage or work to your disadvantage. If you've got a real estate agent who primarily sells houses and they're doing one property maintenance a contract for property management for a friend of theirs who owns this building, that should give you a hint as to their savviness and their ability to support you should an issue come to light. Here's some really good ones coming up. Who were the last two tenants to move into the location and when? Ask your property manager or your landlord that. Then I would go talk to those two tenants and find out what their negotiations were like, find out what their rent is, and find out any issues or good things that they've experienced since they've taken over tenancy. And then ask of the leasing agent or landlord, who were the last two tenants to move out? Why is that important? Well, that's important because you can find out why they failed or didn't fail. Did the business get sold? Did they have an SBA loan? Did they just have the wrong business in the wrong location? Did somebody die? There's a lot of intelligence that can be gleaned from finding out who the tenants are and who the tenants were, and then trying to get the story behind why they came in and why they left. Next, you want to ask, how secure is the anchor tenant? So if you're going into a plaza and, for an anchor tenant, of course, it's a major retailer like a Publix or a JCPenney, well, probably not JCPenney, but a Publix or a Walmart. You want to find out how stable they are, because part of the attraction of having a good anchor is they're going to drive people and foot traffic. And if, that's an unfinancially sound company, there's a good chance they may disappear. And in the world of retail, with the internet sales and the onset of Amazon, the awareness with regard to who your anchors are can really drive your foot traffic and your subsequent sales and success. So You got to think about malls. Those are prime examples where anchors have died off, and subsequently the restaurants and the smaller retailers within the mall have really struggled as a function of that. The next question you want to ask is the property for sale? Now, you probably get a 50-50 shot on whether you want to negotiate with a current landlord or a future landlord, but nobody buys an investment property with the intention of lowering rates. So knowing whether or not a piece of property is for sale, and then being able to gauge the ability of that new owner to raise the rents, and a little bit of savviness with regard to understanding how bank financing works and what kind of interest rates and payments an investor may have on a purchase will help you negotiate and make a decision whether entering into a lease or not entering into a lease relative to the question of, is the business up for sale, or rather the property up for sale. And then finally, you want to ask, what are the current CAM charges? And then you want to get a little deeper into CAM charges and ask, are there any repairs that are coming due? Major repairs, roofs, HVAC, plumbing, redoing of the parking lot. So when you're eyeballing the property and doing your walkthrough, you want to assess those elements and then ask the question, when were these things done last? And then realize that, if the parking lot hasn't been done in 30 years and there's potholes everywhere, there's probably going to be a CAM expense layered onto the tenants that they're going to have to eat that cost. So these are the 10 questions I think you need to ask when negotiating a lease or considering engaging in a lease. If you have any questions, give me a call, 321-287-0349, or visit me at yourfloridabusinessbroker.com.